This is one of the things that impresses me. We are trying to simulate human intelligence, but we do not really understand what human intelligence is, nor do we understand what consciousness is. We are advancing greatly in the technology of objects, yet human knowledge and self-knowledge are still far behind in comparison. It is as if we have grown in our understanding of the objects we handle. Human knowledge progresses much more slowly, so self-knowledge is not considered a priority. For them, self-knowledge was the priority. Know yourself, and you will know the universe and the gods as a consequence. Thus, this search for the human essence gave them a profound sense of what could happen when a certain type of person rose to power. So he goes on to describe the different forms of government and the typical politician of each. It is a very interesting thing. All the troubles, all the flaws that we see today in today's news, in the popular figures of our time.
But we've had some discussions here, some great conversations with scientists about what consciousness is. Because there is a lot of talk about machines reaching singularity, in other words, becoming like us humans. But that's impossible because we ourselves can't even define what makes us human. What is our consciousness? Is it our memories? Does it mean that if we manage to map all our memories and put them into a machine, it will be... Will it be Roger, or is it more than that? Is it our mind, our capacity to think? We are unable to clearly define what it is, what some people call the soul, what this consciousness is. What do you personally think about consciousness? What exactly is human consciousness? And what makes us different from other animals, for example?
Consciousness is not exactly a thing in itself. Consciousness is an attribute which is perceptivity, sensitivity and perception, both external and internal. It is capable of capturing things within us, self-knowledge, for example.
Love, hate, everything we are able to feel.
Exactly. It is capable of self-knowledge, of turning inward and outward, perceiving things. It is perceptivity. Now, the big question is, who possesses this perceptivity? Who is the being that has this perceptivity?
In other words, how do we interact with the external world? How do these things reach us? These perceptions that reach me touch sight.
They are like mechanical hands that bring expressions of the world to us. But the ability to receive them, to make sense of them, to decode them, we organize all of this within a framework of meaning according to values. A machine nowadays can easily record a certain scene and describe the objects present there.
Exactly.
It can describe, but it is not capable of establishing connections between them, for example, emotional bonds. It cannot be inspired by them and create a poem. There are many functions that are unique to a human being, right? If we go back to that idea from Plato, these would originate from our essence, which also exists in that realm of ideas. The human essence would experience the world, enveloped by this film that is consciousness. It perceives things, analyzes them, and brings them inward. It is precisely this essence, which some call the soul in a more theological perspective, this human essence, that is capable of a form of knowledge that is not merely rational. Reason would be just one of its tools. But it is capable of ethics, for example, the perception of justice of the things of nature. Aesthetics, the perception of beauty and harmony. Mysticism, the perception of the sacred. Mysticism not as a matter of dogma, but as a sense in which you realize that a moment in your life has become sacred, has been sanctified, as if you had stolen it from time. Imagine you are walking with someone, holding hands in the late afternoon.
Me and Paquito holding hands at sunset. A dance.
Yes, with violins playing.
No, there doesn't even need to be a violin, man, but like, there's some music playing on the beach in the distance. I look at him and say, man, this moment is eternalized in the universe.
Exactly. There is a philosopher named Mircea Eliade who says that the sacred is the function of giving meaning. When you take anything out of banality and give it a sacred meaning, in that moment I realized something about life. In that moment I found a certain answer. That moment for you left the realm of the ordinary. It became a sacred moment. In other words, the sacred is not just religious ceremony. The sacred is present in everything in life. This perception, this intuition of what is sacred, is also something uniquely human. You could consider intuition, you could consider inspiration, you could consider ethics, aesthetics, mysticism, and feelings in general. A whole range of things that are also ways of processing information. It's not just reason. It's not just logical concatenation.
As you say this, I remember several moments in my life when I had the clear sensation that I was experiencing something truly unique. and that I would remember it for the rest of my life as I do. I can transport myself back to those moments when I said, I will remember this for the rest of my life. I am able to return to those moments because of how powerful they were. Whether because they were traumatic or because they were joyful, like the birth of my child, or when I was very young, I remember an afternoon playing, having so much fun that I said, as a child, I will remember this for the rest of my life. And for some reason, maybe because I tried to remember it, I still recall it to this day, along with other moments. So I really believe there is something more to it. This is something inexplicable.
It's as if you took something from one dimension and moved it to another. From the dimension of time to a more permanent dimension. From something fleeting to something more permanent, more enduring. And that would be a sacralization. An act of making something sacred. Now, how does this happen? Why is it that, for one person, walking at sunset is sacred? How could a machine-like mentality ever understand something like this?
But let's say it somehow manages to, through some kind of experience where we actually provide it with an enormous, truly absurd and overwhelming amount of data.
But there will always be something new. At any given moment, someone might look down, pick up a stone and say, I'm going to take this stone with me because it marks the moment when I had a certain idea. That it represents the moment when they discovered something. But who is going to discover this? This can happen in completely different ways. It can catalog those who have already had this experience. But how can you discover when it will happen or generate this experience? Because it is permanently creative.
You are generating it, and it changes depending on the historical period. It also evolves over time, because this moment we're talking about back in Greece, it was one thing, today it's another. And 20 years from now, it could be something else entirely.
Yes, there may be cultural influences as well. But sometimes these are completely unexpected things that cannot be predicted. A boulder in the middle of the path becomes a sacred object for someone. How could you ever predict that?